All right, the Madison County Board of Education work session for Thursday, May 4th, 2017 is called to order. Mr. Curry, if you would be so kind as to lead us in prayer, it would be appreciated.
Sure. Thank you, Lord, for this evening that we're here gathered together. We thank you for the wisdom to guide our students and our faculty as a board. Lord, we thank you for this opportunity. In Jesus' name we pray. Amen.
Amen.
That's all you know.
All right. It's good to have everyone here. We have some updates just want to share with the board. We had there's a lot of things going on, first of all, right now with this, the end of the year winding down, but we had one of our green card teams, I think they came to a board meeting a while back where they won a grant to get a green card, and so they raced in Indianapolis, and they actually won the races and got some cool awards, and so now there's actually some talk about some more funds being raised to try to expand the program to other schools. It's been really impactful, and I know Ms. Stowe would love to brag about that if she was here. I'm sure she'd be wearing a checkered flag shirt or something. But so congrats to them. And we have senior awards days coming up in the next 2 weeks, and we've got, board members, you guys are invited to those. I know on I think it's Tuesday, we have 3 at one time, and then Sparkman and New Hope are kind of separate, but the other 3 schools are all going to be on one day. So you guys are welcome to come to that as we celebrate our graduates. Earlier this week, I guess yesterday, the education budget passed the House. There's a little variation between that and the Senate version, so we'll then go to conference committee. And next week, I'll be going to Montgomery and presenting as part of the chair of the math committee that Superintendent Senate set up. We'll be making a presentation to the State Board of Education on Thursday. So we're kind of finalizing our reports and presentation on that. So that will be coming up down there. You guys can view that live on their website. That's been a pretty cool process to go through. We have several items to discuss this evening, and board, feel free to ask questions, and some of these will be presented kind of in a team effort. We'll start off with the discussion of the athletic policy. Dr. Minsky will kind of take the lead on that presentation.
A couple of meetings ago, we've been discussing the athletic policy, and we've met with our principals, we've met with the athletic directors at the school level, and had feedback from you. The latest draft is what's on your documents. Can we pull that up? Can we pull them up?
I can get it up.
You can get it up?
Yeah, I think I can.
What we've done is basically taken 3 different sections of the athletic policy, which was the high school, the middle school, and the cheerleading policy, and kind of combined that into one athletic policy. One of the things we really wanted to look at was areas in which are governed by the Alabama High School Athletic Association. So instead of having them in policy where when the Alabama High School Athletic Association changes things, we can just basically incorporate their guidelines to our policy. A couple of things I would like to talk about tonight is number 3 on the final draft. That's the cheerleading policy. The final draft.
The revised.
Go back to the folders there, Mark.
I didn't see it in there. Is this
Well, the only thing I saw was cheerleading.
It's in ours, but yeah, one that is going on. Not the current. Mark, who is signed on there, and I'll make sure that the one that we're looking for is in there.
Those 3 are in there. I can drag.
But it's not in that one.
That's the cheer policy. It should say athletic policy, and there are 10 sections to it.
Oh, my computer's not wanting to work very well.
Is it?
Mark, are you the
I
one
got
that
it.
signed on? Is it?
Yeah, this is
Okay.
it, that's it.
Who's signed on, and I'll make sure that they have, that it's in their folder. It's you? You should have it, but we'll make sure.
We had a specific cheerleading policy, which was a lot of
Refresh
repeat,
and it should be-
repetitive
there it
type
is.
things.
We discussed this a while back, didn't we?
Uh-huh.
Mhm. We've discussed it numerous times over the years,
Okay.
but
If we look at number 3, had a recommendation to do the 4 bullets, A, B, C, and D, scroll down. There you go. It was brought up again, a recommendation to take B and D out and kind of leave the Alabama High School Athletic Association required forms. So that again, when High School Association changes their forms, that we just kind of use the updated forms as opposed to having something that's in policy. I mean, they could change the Star Sportsman concussion form and name something else, and they would have to change it and come back and change it also.
well, not only do they change it, but they update it. So if you don't
Correct.
go to their website and get the most up-to-date
Right.
one, then you may have the wrong one. They don't always put out
Look.
when that's been updated, because sometimes that's, so I think that wouldn't be bad to just say the,
Any other Alabama High School Athletic Association form, or how do you think we need to word that? So we took B and D off, or excuse me,
do they have to
You
have
just took B off?
we just took D off, D release form.
do they have to turn in a birth certificate every time, or just that first?
It's just the first
time that they
time.
try
Once
out.
you have your file built,
You can use
those
the,
forms actually stay within your file.
but we need to
The
keep
current
that for
physical
new.
is what has to be done here.
So would you want to just say all forms required by the
State.
AHSAA
Yeah.
as an item? Okay.
That makes better.
And it needs to say to have, doesn't it? Just not to, since they are required to. And
Or to present one of the two.
I had a question up here. It goes into, includes major and minor sports. And those aren't defined. Is that, what does that mean, really?
Where are you?
In the first paragraph?
Maybe approved by the board. This program is one of
Oh, you're on the first, I was looking in the first paragraph of the cheerleading policy, I'm sorry. I was like, let's see that.
Is that not defined by the ASH?
No.
It is not.
That's the old wording from the old athletic policy. We're keeping kind of the intro close to the same, but I agree with you, that needs to be,
Just remove
we
sports.
can just remove that. Yeah, we can
Includes-
take that out.
Yeah,
So just take the sport piece out. Okay.
yep.
And the other question I had, I guess is more for Cindy, but it says, local schools may establish additional terms and conditions above the established board minimum requirements. And I notice, I always go and look at other people's policy in Madison City, for instance. They say, as long as school eligibility criteria are not inconsistent with system-wide eligibility. In other words, it's just not whatever the school wants to do, but it's within some parameters.
Yeah, that jumped out at me also. I had a concern about the additional terms and conditions and equity between the different schools. But I was wondering if that was in the old policy and what the rationale behind that was. But I was looking at, that's what I was doing.
Where are you at
Where you
now?
at?
Okay, in the first paragraph.
It's like the second full
I
sentence
couldn't
in
find
the
it.
first paragraph.
Yeah, other schools, I think that's Tavia,
Oh, they could say
another school
additional
in
teams.
Madison City. Put some parameters around
It
that
is.
language.
It is in the old policy.
Yeah,
as well.
it's right there.
Yeah.
Local school.
When would that happen?
Do what?
I mean, why would you not use?
I mean, if a school wanted to,
Some of them have a contract in which they have students sign if they have X number of behavior issues or X number of grade requirements, that type of thing, that we've had schools do that for their students to
Yeah.
kind of make it more stringent, understand that.
We've had
Kind of held a little higher expectation.
community service sometimes is, 'cause if you're going to be part of a team, you need to support your whole community, not just your team.
but that's something if you guys, that would be the case if it's to get part of a trial, if it's, if it's require a community project or service or things. Is that something you'd rather, you guys
I
want
don't
to see?
oppose it to being in there. I just noticing other people said, it's not just whatever a school wants to do. It's like, as long as it's not inconsistent with the rules and the regulations of the athletic association and it goes on, there's language, but you can look at Madison City and Vestavia Hills, and their language is consistent, so it kind of makes me think it came from maybe the AASB or somebody.
So basically, you can add those additional terms as long as they don't break any rules
There you
or
go.
laws or,
Mhm.
yeah, things like that.
Okay. We flip over to number 9 then. And that was the question of whether or not we need to keep in, or if that's kind of part of what we said.
Cheerleading squad is to be
We said that, and that was each cheerleading squad is supervised by a board employee. We've already said that the team needs to be supervised by a board employee earlier, which is
Number 7.
number 7. So we need this twice. Which
Oh,
is,
coaches must be.
or do we need to just take cheerleading squad out and say each team is to be supervised by a certified board?
Why wouldn't you just add some of that to number 7?
Just take, yeah.
Take 9 out and just say all coaches must be approved by the Madison Court, the MCBOE, and be a certified employee, or be a certified approved employee.
Let's-
That's the piece we're just trying to figure, we need to make sure we have the supervision piece of it, and so.
So that's
if the
separate.
coach calls a practice, we're basically saying the coach needs to be there at that practice.
Gotcha.
Instead of, to actually supervise, instead of just, yeah. Captain, you guys get a rough practice in there, that type of thing, so. So do we want to add that to 7? Or do we want to
So
leave it at
7 is really about the coaches are
Coaches.
going
The
to be a
person-
coach, you got to be approved.
Approved.
9 is really talking about a practice and exercise, so,
I see them as separate. You
Okay.
can combine them together, but I see those as two separate functions.
Take out cheerleading now?
Yeah, because all teams need to have
Yeah.
a coach there, correct? Not just,
Be
But it's not just
supervised by the board
teams, I mean,
employee.
it's,
Yeah.
any activity, I think, has to have a certified board
Yeah.
employee.
So we say each team, each board.
yeah.
Each team.
Organization,
All athletic,
All athletic teams
All
need to
athletic,
be
yeah.
supervised by board employees.
that's what the bottom of the section is.
yeah.
Okay.
No,
Is it-
Then we don't
Take
need
out
the
some.
next.
Then we don't need the next,
They would just need to be by a board employee.
okay. But then do you need the next sentence, this employee will serve as the coach or sponsor of each squad?
you should take that off.
Yeah.
You don't
The
need
second
that.
sentence in number 9 then would need to go as well. You may have already done that, I can't see. I gotta put my glasses on to see that one. Take them off to see this one.
Any other questions, comments, or things you need to look at?
Thank you.
Is there anything that's been removed that you think needs to be put back in? Other policy?
All right. Well, this is,
That was a lot of work and a lot of time, so I appreciate it. How long we've been working
a
on
lot
it?
of athletic policies into 8 or 9 points here, so we've been talking
Yeah.
about that for a long time.
Yeah.
Can you remind me how a cheerleading squad with these changes will go to nationals if they? can you-
So we're basically not addressing that, so it would really depend on the competition right now. If it's a UCA event, if they earn a bid, UCA allows them to go to the national competition.
And the
Okay.
AHSSA handbook does not have anything in it that qualifies how a
But we used to
cheerleading squad-
qualify that, so we're just removing those qualifiers at this point completely.
Right.
Yeah, we looked at it, I mean, our bands have gone, cheerleading's gone, choir's gone, so we have so many organizations going, we didn't feel it was appropriate to qualify just for cheerleading. As
Right.
far as, they have to qualify, they'd have to actually earn a bid to be able to go, don't think they just go.
Under the one that's talking about supplements, it says to earn supplements. Now, that's just talking about the head coach, I guess, there, or is it more than that?
Which number?
6. I mean, because.
So you can't have a can't form a team and only play 2 games. So there's a minimum, HSA kind of has a minimum threshold
Mhm.
of games. We used to have that minimum in our policy for each sport, but what happened is the HSA changed their policy. Ours were static, and so they didn't match with the HSA. So that's what, and maybe we should put in
Should
that
just
meet
follow
all
AHSA
AHSA
policy.
standards. So number 6, let's add in there, meet all AHSA standards, but that's where that number 6 covers about 2 pages of our old policy.
Right, and so if you meet all those stipulations, you earn, it says earn supplements.
You can
And
earn
is
your
that
supplement.
head coach
Assistant
supplement?
coach, everything.
Every supplement. And so it kind of, I still don't understand, and maybe this is somebody supply it, but how you earn, which teams earn all these supplements. And when we see these on the personnel things that we look at and approve, I can't tell which ones are
Unclaimed.
provided by booster clubs, which ones, I mean, I don't know the source of it.
We
So-
can note
okay.
that on there. We can start noting those.
Okay.
And when it's submitted to us, it's notated, it's thankful of, if it's an if it's a supplement or approved supplement, or if it's long whatever.
Yeah, just the rules around that, and then as they come across, what the source is, that would be helpful.
Do you have questions about the rules of it? or how
Yeah, I don't
they-
know which teams get, how do we know which teams get, local tax-funded
How many,
supplements?
how many supplements are provided for each team?
There you go. And-
I have a document
Okay.
in my office. I'll
Yeah,
share
I'd
it
like
with
to
you.
see that, just to understand it.
And this comes into play, high school football coaches who coach the season, football season, but then they resign at Christmas and jump in the spring. So they would get, we have a formula where they would get a percentage of their supplement, not full supplement, because they fulfill their contract, and that's kind of what we're saying in policy.
Okay.
If they're full supplement, they kind of fill it.
All right, what's our timeline on bringing this up for approval? Is it later in May or in June?
That was next.
How much time do you guys need to, you want a little more time to review this?
We could look at it and say, we could look at the
June.
June meeting and have it, I'll review the changes you guys asked for, and get it back out to you one more time. Take a
Does
look.
this have to go to the teacher's policy review?
It's already been through policy.
Good, okay.
Just waiting on us.
Okay. All right, next up is an idea that, that Principal Shaw actually brought to us and discussed with other principals. And it's an all-sports pass that, that he would like for the board to consider. We kind of mentioned this before with Ms. O'Bannon here. She's very aware of this, and you can bring this up, Mark. It's item D in the other folder there. And so Principal Shaw and Dr. Minsky will kind of co-present on this. Mr. Shaw, do you want to take the lead here?
Sure, I'll let you go through. Sure.
Did you guys discuss this?
I've done it at
No.
other school systems.
No, we discussed it a couple of years ago with Jeff and David.
At the
Mhm.
beginning of the year, you can sell it to parents, you can also sell it to community members, you can also sell it to students. It's very comforting to know what the budget is as a principal at the beginning of the year. And we really try to sell it in August, at Expo Day. And the ideal is for parents in the community, it would be $100, and they get an all-home sporting events at Spartan High School. For students, we give them a discount, it would be $75, and they can get into any home event except for the Alabama High School Athletic Association playoffs. What they would do is they would get an ID card, sort of like they do in colleges with activity card, with a photo ID, and they would get into the home games free. Parents like it a lot because they have the card where they don't have to, come up with $7 for all the home games and then the basketball games and soccer. And it's very comforting to know that if you, with our population, if you sell, let's say $20,000, that you already have $20,000 before the school year has even begun for your athletic budget. And so it's also a little bit comforting because, as you know, football drives the revenue, and so if you're counting it for the budget to have, a big rivalry game, and you think you're gonna have a really good gate, and then it pours down rain, that could hurt your gate, and that's the money, that's revenue that you need for your other sports, especially your non-revenue, your tennis, your golf, your track. Those sports really is hard to generate funds, and it's just an option. It's an option. Kids don't have to buy a sports pass. Parents don't have to do it, but a lot of people like to do it for the convenience, and also if you go to all the events, it's really a bargain for those kids and those parents if they go to a lot of different events. Kind of break it down. If the parents were to pay the $100, they would do the $60 would be they could designate which sport they want to. So if I have a golf player and I wanted to check the golf box, that $60 would go towards that sport. The other $40 will help for facilities, for capital improvements, pay for, as you know, it's expensive for fertilizing the grass, the turf, weight equipment that's outdated, fences, scoreboards, uniforms, and so that would be a revenue for those, and also and then the $75 will also go to the athletic account, which will also help for those non-revenue sports and those, of course, the sports that do generate revenue. It's just an option, and it's been very successful at previous schools I've been, I've worked at, and it's worked very well.
The other high schools, I've talked to all the high school principals, and they like the idea, they like the fees. Now, not all agreed and say, hey, yes, we're definitely going to do this, but they thought it was a good idea that we'd get it forward.
What does a person, is it going to be a laminated card with a picture? How do we ensure that we're just, that, number one, that it's not transferable, and two, what's the?
We do a photo. We have ID cards at Sparkman that we can make the ID. You can also put the student number on there. It'll be sort of like at the pass gate when they would come in and they would just present their ID, their photo ID that matches.
So would there be any kind of scan where you can verify that they hadn't made a card that looks similar to what you issued?
Well, we haven't done that in the past.
Okay.
Of course, we got Alabama High School, all the coaches. We have coaching cards, and they don't scan those. And I'm not saying there won't be bootleg cards today, but it has not
It's not
been
a concern
before. Yes.
Madison, we could do something similar to these.
Right.
Basically, if Sparkman did a PowerPoint folder with 500 people in it, identical with pictures in it, you would just email it to me, I would print you 500 badges similar to this, which would have your logo on it, you could have anything on it you wanted, and it would cost you about a quarter.
Is it $100 per adult or $100 for us parents? So if,
Per adult.
Per adult.
So I'm not sure what I'm trying to answer, but I know that we have to keep track of our ticket sales with the numbered tickets. So this would just be kind of like once you paid it, you just wouldn't get, it's already accounted for.
That's right.
You wouldn't
That's
have to try to, I'm just thinking about the times I've worked the board and the front door, and oh my God, I lost a ticket. I'm not on number anymore.
Have you,
Okay.
You would number them consecutively as you sold them.
Absolutely.
You would put that on the badge itself, so you
Gotcha.
had a running total there.
have you gotten a lot of good feedback from parents in all the sports activities,
Yeah.
other than just
In fact,
football?
that's what kind of prompted it, because I've got, several emails, especially, softball. We play a few games in softball, and we have a few games in baseball, and so a lot of parents, I'm not sure what other schools have done it, but I've got really good feedback. And like I said, it's just an option. Nobody has to purchase
Right.
anything. If they want to just, pay, individual games, they can. So it's just an option.
But the goal is not to be reciprocal. So if I buy one at Buckhorn, I can't go to a Sparkman home game.
That's correct.
You're paying.
I'm not.
The
I don't go to that
Have a
one.
district pass. Go well.
How did you?
Well, for a fee, we can probably,
Can I get a parking space?
Each, absolutely.
Now, I have had schools sell parking spaces at the game. but Let's not go there right
Let's
now.
not go there.
And this is annual, I mean, it goes out saying this is an annual renewal, you know.
Yes, it goes out every year.
Next year, you get another card if you
Absolutely.
decide to re-up it.
Yes, sir.
Before, have you had any backlash from the schools losing that 40, the teams losing that 40%?
No, because it's,
Because they benefit from the facility.
yeah, they benefit for facility, especially, you know, we do have some old weather equipment, and so it really will go to, you know, big projects that you would see. And then, it's so hard for the non-revenue sports. It really helps out for
Does the band-
our cross-country teams. Right,
Does it
that's
matter to
correct.
booster fanfare?
Well, I mean, I was.
Because they don't get a
Yeah,
cutoff.
and they can look at that.
We get
and
concessions,
It could really be a
So it may
fundraiser
increase
for
the amount of
for those
Absolutely.
sports. Absolutely.
In your previous experience, what's the percentage you think of parents that?
You try to shoot for about 20-25% of your school population. That's a realistic goal. So if you have high school with 1,600, a realistic number is about 400.
And to go to what Cynthia just said, I mean, the parents buying this are generally going to be the parents with children in the activity or activities, and they're most likely paying booster fees anyway. So this isn't going to take away from that team. They're already paying a fairly large chunk of their weekly paycheck into the activity anyway, so.
How did you-
Willingly.
How did you come up with the pricing?
Just from the experience, you know, with all the events and if you add everything up, I think if you went to every sporting event at Sparkman with the passes, it's around about $450 if you went to every sporting event.
And if you know, a lot of our teams do a lot of fundraisers. We sell a lot of stuff nowadays. We sell mattresses and cookie dough and
Yeah.
coupon cards that you might never use. This could actually be a fundraiser where 100% of the revenue goes right back into the school. So maybe if somebody even wouldn't even go to a game, they're realizing, well, you know what, for $100, I know it's all going to the school.
Do you see a reduction in fundraising?
So I think this would be the fundraiser. And so, yeah, I think.
I don't think so. I don't think so, because the booster clubs are the ones doing the fundraising, because they also need money. I mean, I don't have a problem with
That's
this.
right. This
The
is not
booster,
the
this
booster.
doesn't go to the booster
And
organization
Gates
at
don't
all.
do boosters either.
So I don't think it would decrease the amount of fundraising that's done through the booster organizations, but it does give him, or all the principals, a better idea of where they're going to start the year at before they start seeing that revenue from the gate come in.
And I think it was this year, where it seemed like Hazel Green had 3 of their big home games were all rain delayed. I know like the Buckhorn game, they had to, as they were
Right.
coming in, we kind of had to delay. I
Yeah.
mean, and it really hurt them this year with their budget when they had, it happened 3 times. So it would be added some consistency.
This doesn't negate the parking fees. This is strictly gate fee. So
Yeah,
they
it's
still
just-
pay, they
yeah,
still
just
pay the
getting-
parking.
That's correct. Yes, sir.
Think about creating a parking pass where you can just,
We can do it. I got 1,000 ideas about raising money, so.
Let's make sure this one works before we, it's not, like Ms. O'Bannon says, we can do anything you want, but not everything you want. So, make sure it works. I have to admit, as a parent, it would be nice to pay $100 and be done for the year. Is it $8 to get into football? Seven? You know.
It's set by the board. the cost for
Yeah,
students.
but it's just having to remember that you need $7 and you need, and 5 to part, it would be nice to just.
And it really helps as far as the ticket thing, where they can just show that card.
Are you going to have a separate line?
Absolutely.
That would
We
be
have a big
fabulous.
line for us.
A pass gate would be nice.
He's got a fast
Thank
gate.
you.
He's got a fast gate.
Because I've waited in the parking lot for hours.
You didn't get there soon enough.
So in the past, have you kind of come out neutral at the end of the day as far as how much you collected at your other high schools? Or did you actually increase your?
Oh, yeah,
revenue?
I've started off the year with, before first day of school, have $30,000 in athletic.
But at the end of the year, are you about where you would have been
Oh,
anyway?
yeah, it's great. You can budget and where the money goes for all the other sports. It's always been really, really
So the net, it's not necessarily you're going to bring in more, you're not going to bring in less, it's pretty close to.
Your
what-
games, your home games, let's say a football game, because a normal game without, let's say it's 15,000, you're playing a big rivalry game. With the pass, your gate would be like 10,000, but you know, the reason it's not 15, it's 10 because we've already sold the sports passes.
Right. So when you get all said and done, you expect to be better off, the same, or less well
I
off?
think it'd be better off.
Better off, okay.
It stabilizes our athletic budget because, let's say, the Hazel Green situation, this past year, we played Bob Jones, James Clemens, and we played Hazel Green. Those three gates, when we played Bob Jones, it was a $24,000 gate. Because at that time, we were doing really well, and if it rains, we all been at games where it rains, where it's just the parents and the bands that have to go in. You expecting a 24,000, it could drop down to 3,000 or 4,000. So that $20,000 that you're hoping for, that you could use to not only fund the football program, but the other non-revenue sports, it's gone. And then the next year, you may not have those rivalry games. Like next year for us, we don't play Bob Jones and James Clemens at home. We play them away. And so we play those other schools, which we've got some of our schools we're playing next year, like Decatur. They may not bring a big crowd. And then all of a sudden, we're anticipating, we'll say, making $50,000 from football. The next year, we drop to $30,000. So now we're $20,000 less because we're depending on weather and also depending on the opponent and how well they're doing. It just stabilizes everything. So.
Question, all right, any other
Thank you.
questions?
Thanks.
Very good, thank you.
Thank you.
Sure.
All right, next up, we're going to be discussing the code of conduct. This is something that the board approves every year. I have a committee of 7, it's just 7 principals that kind of gather together, and we meet about once a month and have a grand old time talking about all the different issues and fun things like the code of conduct. So I kind of asked these guys if they wanted to be a part of a committee to analyze this, and they pretty much all volunteered. So Michelle Stovall has led this cooperation, and Mr. Hughes was part of it. So he's kind of, come on over, Mr. Hughes, going to kind of co-present with Ms. Stovall and to kind of talk about there was a lot of meetings, and in fact, I think a couple board members was on that
Mr.
committee
Curry.
too.
Mr. Curry was.
To kind of
And
serve.
Ms.
So sit in and get comfortable and
Yeah.
for this presentation, and you guys take it away.
And it's been a process, as you described. This first thing is the directors, because you got their input about their actual sections that they're over. So the directors, supervisors, and coordinators of each department had a say in it. And then after that, it went to the board committee of 2 board members. I appreciate their diligence to it, because it's a thick document, 39 pages. So going through and combing through each one of those pages to make sure that we updated to actually fit what the needs of our students and schools are, was a process. And then the principal committee helped kind of shape those ideas, because everybody has a little bit different perspective. So they added the school perspective, what they actually saw in schools and what we need to do. So what you're going to see is a compilation of these meetings. It's 14 pages. I'm just going to show you the draft pages that we actually touched. We only touched 14 pages in the document of 39. So that's almost half, a little bit less. But so the first page, and these are just the updates, is the knowledge and observation of rules and conduct. We just kind of fixed that language. It previously had the principals were creating, so we just cleaned it up because they aren't creating, they're enforcing the board policy. So we cleaned up that language. And that was the only change in that section. Page 2, I'm sorry. So, and I uploaded in the folder, I uploaded 4 documents, hoping that didn't confuse you. So the first one was just the page that we touched. The second one was the current policy, current code of conduct. The second one was all the changes to include the additions and deletions. The last one is the draft, so you can see the clean version. So then, only other thing on page 2 that we touched is we added the words notify in writing, because if they notify the school and they call, you don't necessarily document it, but if they notify you in writing, they actually document it in the student's files for a purpose. Do you have any questions or concerns about page 2? Then on page 3, this is when we started to get into the dress code, just to kind of update the language to reflect what we see and what the schools can actually enforce dress code violations. We're seeing a lot of different things going on, so we cleaned up jewelry piercings because it had a lot of language about eyes, lips, tongues, noses, so we just cleaned it up to say piercings. And they're allowed as long as they're not hazardous or unsafe and don't distract or draw unnecessary attention. We don't need to define where the piercings are. They're everywhere. And then with pants, shorts, we went with, because some of the...
Yeah, I don't like the piercing change. I mean, if
Okay.
you're looking for personal opinion.
Okay.
I think things hanging out your nose and lips are very distracting.
Well, that's the language. The language, last statement says as long as they don't draw or distract.
Mr. Hughes, you want to chime in, because we actually had this conversation about this. Talk a little bit about how that conversation went.
If a student, obviously, I don't have any piercings, so I'm with you. I'm against all piercings. My daughter got her ears pierced when she was little, and I wish she had. That's how staunch I am against them. But I also don't spend my days as an administrator dealing with a student who has a tiny little shiny thing in their nose right here. If it doesn't distract from what's going on in class, if there aren't students that are making a big deal out of it, if that student's not making a big deal out of it, if you as a parent decided that it was okay for your child to have that, then while on a personal level, I'm really not for that, it's not taking away from the educational process. And I really would rather spend my time on that educational process, as I had battling a parent over whether or not their child can have a piercing anywhere, really. Now, if it is a piercing where a child has a nose ring and an earring and there's a chain hanging from one to the other, and another student may walk up and pull that or do something unsafe, and as a principal, I do feel like then it is my job to kind of step in and say, that's not only distracting, but it's also probably unsafe for your student to have that at school. So that's kind of why we changed that language there and kind of leave it up to the discretion of the principal to say that's, you know, if one school or another, that a nose ring may be, that might be a big deal. And it may cause, and if it does, if a kid comes in the central with a nose ring and I spend the majority of the day with kids running up to me saying, hey, you know, this kid's got this nose ring, and the kid's making a big deal out of it, and every class they're going in, putting their finger on their nose, and then I'm probably going to call the kid and say, hey, you can't wear that because you're distracted. But if nobody says anything about it, I'd rather not deal with it. And that was really the consensus of the group, the principals in that group.
And as a board member that was part of that conversation, I agree with that. I think, you have better things to do with your day if it's not distracting to the students in the classroom. If the parent feels it's acceptable, I don't see where the issue would arise. So it's kind of the same consensus me and Mary Louise Stowe had in the meeting as well. So
That's how we put it. Now, again, I'm against person, but I don't have to deal with bring my personal views on that and try to enforce that.
So if it is distracting, who gets the final say on that? You?
I think the principal does. And that's not just the case with piercings. I think you'll see that even in the old policy, where principals sometimes have to make that call if something's distracting or dangerous. It's kind of left up to our judgment in that building. Is this something that's going to cause a problem today? And we have to say, I think it's central. I can only speak for what I would do. But if a kid comes in there with that nose ring and it's a distraction, I'm going to call him in my office and say, Tim, would you please take that out? It's causing a distraction today, and I need you to remove it, don't wear it back. If he gives me this, I pick up the phone and call his mom and say, Mom, I need you to come get Tim today. His nose ring's a distraction. I'm not going to remove it, so I need you to come get him for the day. And in the story, bring him back tomorrow, everything's fine without the nose ring. But if he walks in my office, I had that conversation with him, he said, yes, sir, I get it, I understand. I'd be like, great, put it in your pocket, don't want you to see it again today. And we never had this conversation again. I'd much rather deal with it that way than in every case. And this is surprising some folks in here because they think Ms. Cheese is going to hammer them if they do. But I would much rather deal with it with that conversation and doing it that way than saying, oh, don't get up here, you're out of here for today. So that's just our perspective. I hope that makes sense.
So with pants, shorts, dresses, and skirts, we had the conversation about the style where they're having holes, and we didn't agree with holes everywhere. But we know kindergarten, first grade, elementary kids, they play on their knees, they get holes in their pants on their knees, so then they have to pick them up because of clothing issues. So we addressed that with holes are not allowed above the knee, but below the knee is fine, at the knee level or below is fine. I have a little boy that happens to have two pairs of jeans. They're going into the school year because they're older. So then we find a whole new pair of jeans. We should just be able to wear the ones with the holes at the knee. The other part for that one was if the holes at the knee, then garments, we know that the new style is for young ladies and teachers and adults as well. The Lularoos, the leggings, and then the shirts that go on top of them, the shirts that they go to mid-thigh, we're fine. Anything else, inappropriate. So we kind of match that language. And then pajama pants, that one had a lot of deletions because we saw a lot of athletic wear, windsuit pants, drop it materials, because we had the conversation, we let our sports teams wear them in school, but then our other students cannot. So it's kind of a conflict of interest. They say they're approved and can wear them, you can only wear them on game days, and you have to kind of monitor those things. So is the game day or not? So just to not fight that battle, everybody's okay to wear them, and had that conversation, just change it to just pajama pants and sleeper.
That was a much bigger, more complicated section before.
Nobody slippers.
Pajama day.
Next section was head coverings and sunglasses. We just wanted to make sure that we put in the language, except for religious reasons, we can say a certain name. Just making sure we have that in there. On to page. Riding a school bus. The addition here was the school rules. It didn't say anything about school rules that are applicable to the bus. We know that they are. We just wanted to make sure the language was in the actual code of conduct. And then we changed one of the rules, because one of the rules was obey the rules. So we changed that to the topic instead of, so we want you to obey the rules, and here they are, instead of saying obey the rules being rule number 2. So, seated properly in seats, we changed 6 to say what the conversation was, so no profanity, obscene, or vulgar language, and we took the loud and boisterous talking added to the conversation. Yeah.
My one question is, we talk about what they can't do on the bus, but we don't address what the consequences are if they, if they don't follow the rules.
And bus consequences
Part of the school
are
consequence.
Code of conduct.
the class will be written.
Okay, I guess I must not have seen that, okay.
It's part of it. Any other concerns, questions?
I noticed, and one is right below that section, that there's a couple of references to the No Child Left Behind. Is there any part of that that's still applicable? It's not in that section, but it's the one after it. Yeah.
Are you the draft version or the current?
Where at?
It's under the first,
under release of student information, that first paragraph, it's a couple of times in here, it's the No Child Left Behind Act.
Yeah, that might be just the changes on, you may be, she may just be.
She doesn't have it, but I mean, in the copy.
Yeah,
in the
I see what you're
little
talking
deal.
about. Yeah, the one that's part of the agenda,
That page
on the
two,
purple.
change
You were
that
there.
for that. So when it's talking about those left behind, that purpose still applies with that law. So I updated them to try and address the law, but purpose actually addresses
Yeah, but
that.
I guess they moved some stuff around, so this is the purple.
Okay, I thought it got, I thought that E ESSA totally got away with that, but.
It's part of the SSA. Parts of No Child Left Behind got changed, but that purpose didn't get changed in that one.
Okay.
Some Bento got changed, there's some other pieces that changed with the new reauthorization, but FERPA didn't change.
Okay.
Scrolling agenda. This is part of it.
Due process, we just added the 6 to know what the actual steps are for when a parent disagrees with the decision of either the school principal when it comes to due process being established. If they have a complaint, they start with the school principal, then they come to the coordinator of pupil services, or if they had a hearing, a due process hearing, they would start with the hearing officer, and then we go to the superintendent to appeal, and then superintendent, and then like that decision, it would come to the board. Outline the process of the appeals for due process. Did we skip a second? Did I skip 9?
I don't think so.
I get confused, I'm saying it's scrolling up or scrolling down.
Which one are you looking
Up to where it says
Page-
ninth position.
Page
There it
6.
is. Okay. So the only thing we took out of here was, it started with based on the dimensions. No one could explain what the dimensions were, so we decided to take that out. So it's up to the principal to determine if it's going to be considered as a knife, because a pocket knife is in your pocket, and it's not taken out or anything, that's not necessarily considered a weapon. If it's left in your car, it's not necessarily considered a weapon, but it can be. But we didn't have any dimensions to state one way or another. All right, so now the classification of violations and consequences. This was a massive undertaking that started at the beginning of the school year. What my job was, and I know the principals probably hated me in the beginning because I was monitoring every single week and every couple of weeks just to see what they put into iNow, to make sure their discipline reflected what our codes were. And so some of the things I noticed is that we were mismatching codes, and so what came of that is we added some different codes in to address what they were seeing in schools. The other part of that was just making sure that we could have different levels, because the complaints of some parents were that it was a class, whatever the violation was that they suspended, it was automatically taken to a class 3 level. So we kind of took some of those class 3s and broke them into different categories so that it wouldn't automatically go to a class 3 on the first offense. So, class 1 violations, electronic devices, again, we thought that was a lower punishable type situation, so we moved it to a class 1. All the ones that are not highlighted were already part of the code in this section. What we added was 104, and I changed the numbers, so if you see, they're not all S codes. So minor disruption in the classroom was an addition, because we see classroom violations, but they're being upgraded to class 3s. So if it's a minor disruption.
Talk about what an S code is.
Okay. An S code means it's a SIR violation. SIR violation means the state monitors it. So we have local codes and we have state codes. So in our current policy, local codes, they can't suspend for local codes. Anything that the state is, then that's when you can start to suspend. When you hear me talking about local and state code, that's what I'm talking about, being able to suspend. So minor disruption in a classroom was one that we were seeing happen across the board, but they were not able to necessarily code it what it was. So they were coding it something different. So we made it an actual code that they could actually specify what it was. 105 is what you're talking about on all the bus codes. come into this one. They can be escalated if it's a continuous pattern, and we'll get to that in a minute. Threats and intimidation you're going to see in all three categories. There is going to be a threat assessment for the principals to know, to be able to label it as a low concern, a medium concern, or a high concern, so that's easy. And then we added the violation of acceptable use policy because they were all lumped together in the back of the policy manual, and so bringing those forward to actually correspond with our codes. So if you notice the consequences, we tried to make sure that they knew which consequences went with which class. So if you notice, class 1 consequences, it's all the consequences, but the most they can receive is 2 days of in-school suspension. So that's to make sure that it is implemented across the board the same, so that you're not getting a truancy violation at one school and they're getting 5 days in school, and another school getting a day out of school. Just to kind of make sure that everybody's on the same page. And you're going to see that for every category. And again, I said repeated violations of class 1 can be moved to a class 2 if deemed by the principal. Also, with the investigation, that's already part of the language. If after they investigate, they see it as more of a concern than they thought it was initially, it can also be moved to a class 2. Okay. The class 2 violations, we tried to make sure that these were suspendable offenses where you might could suspend out of school, but weren't necessarily to the level that they need to have a hearing. So in this category, what I added it brought a lot of attention because if you look at the state definitions of these codes, that's where we're getting the discrepancies. So some of our principals had not ever seen the actual definitions from the state. So when they're coding them, they're not reading the definition, so we had discrepancies on that. So with this disruptive demonstration in the state code, it's 5 participants or more. That's if they're doing a riot, if they're walking out of class, if they're walking out of school, if they're protesting, that's a disruptive demonstration. Inciting others, I added without injury, so the class 3 would be with injury. 209 is where the discussion might be because those are examples. It's not an exhaustive list of examples, but if it's a knife possession in a class 2 where you're just going to suspend, you're not going to do a hearing, it could have been a simple pocket knife. It could have been inadvertent possession. It could have been a whole lot of things that didn't rise to a disciplinary hearing level. Okay? So it could be the kid had the knife transporting over the weekend, left it in the backpack, never took it out, but somebody saw it in the backpack and reported it. It could be that issue. It could be a whole host of things, but it didn't rise to a level where they needed a hearing to be recommended for alternative placement. We also added medication policy violation because our current policy, in our medication policy, it states that we only have 4 over-the-counter drugs that students can have. So if they have a Tylenol on them and they're found with that, they automatically get classified as drugs. So I don't think we want to suspend our students for drugs when they had Tylenol. So we implemented the medication policy. The other one was physical attack. What we're seeing is I had some dialogue with principals, and if they had a fight between 2 students, they're comfortable labeling it as a fight. If they had one student who was attacking another student or fighting with another student, they weren't comfortable labeling it as a fight, even though it was a one-sided fight. So we added the physical attack because some altercations don't rise to the level of assault. Assault gets labeled as a unsafe school option, and that's what they were coding it as. If you have so many of those within a 5-year period, your school gets labeled as unsafe, and the kids get to transfer out. So we were trying to make sure that we had a code for that to address a one-sided fight. That was the reason for the addition of the 212. All the rest of them are the same that have been in there. They're escalated from the class 1 to a class 2.
So physical attack means only a one-sided attack.
So this could be,
Is that clear? I mean,
it could be a range. It could be a kid who bites a teacher. Doesn't draw blood, doesn't break any bones, but you're biting a teacher. It's not an assault to the assault level, but it is the kid attacking the teacher. It could also be, I come up and I punch Dr. Jensen in the face. Nothing's broken. She's bruised, but she's not going to the hospital because assault has to be serious bodily injury. So she didn't attack back, or she didn't fight me back, but I attacked her. So it's an assault that's not rising to the state code of assault, is what physical attack is.
Do principals clearly know that difference between physical attack and an assault? And That's,
I've training on that.
okay, good.
Communicate that.
Okay, okay.
And they know that I harp on it all the time. Was that all my class twos?
No.
Let's go there. Okay. So again, like I said, threats and intimidation, it's going to be in all three categories. A medium concern is going to be the class two. I had to specify truancy for this one because if they're late to school, it's tardiness. If they're late to class, it's still tardiness. I had some schools who would go straight to truancy on that one, and that's not what truancy is. So making sure they understood truancy on authorized absence is leaving campus. So if they're no longer on your campus and they leave, that's the truancy. Not if they're in your building, they're just skipping class. I needed to make that distinction for some principals. Okay. And again, AUP is there with intermediates, and we'll get to those. If you notice in the consequences for this ban, it has all the other consequences, but in school up to 3 days, the max they can get is out of school 3 days. Okay, so it's, again, crunching down, giving you a band to work with. Okay. Our class threes, these are our ones that are going to be referred for a disciplinary hearing. So again, alcohol, assault, again, I delineated assault because assault is in two categories, it's in class 3 and the next category. So bodily harm, meaning you have to have medical attention to the degree where you need to go to the hospital. Okay. Disorderly conduct with an arrest. The new one in class 3 is drug paraphernalia because what we've been seeing, well, I've been seeing, I don't know if everybody's been seeing, I've been seeing scales and drug paraphernalia in cars, not necessarily the drugs themselves, but you get the idea and you get the gist that the drugs are going on, but you can't charge them for drug use or drug possession, but you can get them for paraphernalia. So you know that something's going on, but they don't have the drugs in the car or on their person. Fighting, the class 3 is different from the class 2 because it's either repeated, we say multiple fights within a period of time, and then, or if it has serious injuries that don't escalate to the assault level. Again, inciting with injury, and then 322 is new because we had the language in the code of conduct that said you can be subject to disciplinary actions if you refuse, but it wasn't a code. So we're making it a code so everybody's aware that if you refuse to be searched when there's drugs or weapons suspicion, then it is a violation. And then again, the acceptable use. So all class 3s will have a hearing with me. That's the distinction for principals because they didn't know if all of them were class 3s. Their questions were, should it be in a disciplinary hearing or not? So this clearly outlines that for principals. And so if you'll go to the consequences for me. The consequences, again, it's just it's only one or two things. In school for 5 days or out of school for 5 days and a disciplinary hearing. Then class 4, those are your biggies. So hope to not see these in schools. So these are the ones that expulsion is going to be recommended. So these are the ones that are going to come before the board. So arson, assault, first or second degree, and those are defined by state terms, criminal mischief, drug sales, firearm possession. I hope we never see explosives. But then we also added the criminal charge of the AUP policy because what we're seeing is with the increased use of technology comes the increased supervision of students, so their access to more things.
Will you have an other category anywhere?
No.
So you're forced to use something?
Yeah.
Okay.
So I did take away the other buttons. We had that problem of coding inconsistently. And so the consequences for class 4, again, it's only one consequence, which is recommended out of school suspension for 10 days and then expulsion recommendation. Do you have any concerns about the classifications and violations? So next was corporal punishment. The only one thing that we touched with corporal punishment was we removed the line that said while parental approval is not required. Because the principals felt like if I'm going to use corporal punishment, the parent should be contacted. right, the next addition was pediculosis, which is head lice. And this is just a policy that's adapted from the Department of Health. It's their terminology. It's just a straightforward policy because we didn't have anything in our code of conduct addressing head lice.
Madison City says, they have to be free of lice to attend the Madison City Schools. So do we have leeway on that?
Yep.
I don't think so. The CDC no longer considers, we have this problem from time to time. The CDC no longer considers, nor does NIH, the head lice or bed bugs as a communicable disease. They present no harm to the public, and therefore you cannot deny a child education based on the presence.
That passed sometime in the last couple of years.
Actually, about 5-6 years ago. Actually, a little more than that.
Does Madison City get?
Sorry, I didn't mean to jump in your cookies, but I have to explain this like every day. And we actually, I'm glad you put that in there, because usually at the beginning of the school year, when kids come back, we get several emails about, now my kid has lice, but we have no recourse at all. You also can't single out a child. You can't send home the pink note, you can't put a bag on their head like we used to, or send them to the nurse to get taken out like we used to. You can't do anything that would single them out as having it set and separate them and bring any type of attention to the fact that it's there.
What's our current practice?
We just don't have a policy at the, right now.
The nurse will notify the parents if the student has head lice, and then ask them to get them treated. They just notify.
A lot of owners are working
Do we-
with families, and it's the first time kind of give them some resources. to go
We
to,
can't.
They have a packet, they can send them, show them, how to treat the house, that kind of thing.
And we can't ask,
We do this currently. We don't send them home. We don't.
Right.
Okay.
and we can't ask for any verification that treatment was completed or nothing. Yeah.
We can do the same thing again, we can just pester the parents really until they do or don't.
But you can't single out the child at all in any way, shape, or form in the classroom or outside of it.
Organizations get provided, what we call things like that, for parents to get these supported.
How about making other parents aware? Can you do that?
Mm-mm. It's singling out the child. It's like a handicap.
I mean, you don't name the child.
Doesn't matter.
Because this has changed since my kids came through,
Yeah.
because it was a major announcement when there was a lice in
No,
school.
it does not matter. You can only announce a communicable disease, and since it's no longer considered communicable or in any way anything more than a nuisance is how it's actually labeled now by the CDC as well as the NIH. It causes no long-term damage or illness. I'm not saying I appreciate that, but that is.
Mary Louise Stowe told me that lice don't jump. I thought, she
That is what
reminded
they
me
say.
that they don't jump.
They can only crawl.
They-
So they can only
That's
come
comforting.
with
That's what-
head-to-head contact.
That's comforting.
And I have heard some, what do you call those people that specialize in bugs? Epidemiology?
No.
Yeah. Apparently, they're also very happy where they are, so you have to have repeated contact, they say, in order for it to spread, because they're slow-moving, kind of lazy
The
little
sloth of the
creatures.
insect
Yes.
world. Okay. That's asking.
Yes.
So on that same page was electronic communication devices. We had some old outdated language in that policy that included walkie-talkies and beepers. So we just updated that to just say that students are permitted to keep wireless devices. We just kept it short and sweet. We're not going to name all the types of electronic devices. And then we took out, they will be confiscated and changed to may, because it just depends on the situation. Okay. So then acceptable use. Again, these were just in the back with the technology, and they were just listed in ABC order. They didn't really have a violation data and the consequences assigned to them, and the consequences that were listed we're not able to enforce because we can't deny a kid access to the network anymore. That's implementing Canvas. So we just made them violations that went with our policy with classifications and violations. So we just put them in categories that 1, 2, and 3, and 4 class levels. That's all we did. And changed the language to categorize.
So this, the first set is the same consequences as
Class 1.
class, that's not really said there, or is it? I
The
missed it.
112 is the class 1 violation.
The 112
Yeah,
is in the
is the number.
classes. It's listed by number.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
So the 221 is class 2. and so forth.
Okay, I got you.
Kind of like the bus thing.
Okay.
You can scroll through all that. So good.
Is there anything we missed on technology? I mean, I think we covered it pretty good. Is there anything that you think we could add it to that?
Makeup work, we tried to address the absences. It went back and forth from board to principals, so we just kind of left it alone and left it as is. So the only change on that page was the bottom when it says after the accumulation of 5 unexcused absences. Our truancy policy actually starts with the 3 is when we start to make contact and follow through with truancy activities. Any questions on that?
It's kind of specific. I think Buckhorn is the only AB schedule. So if you miss Monday, you come back Tuesday, you don't have that class again. So that makes it hard to make it up in the one day because you don't have that class again for 2 days to be able to ask. See what I'm saying?
Talking about the unexcused absences.
No, for even excused, it says you are given the number of days equal to the number of days absent. So if you miss Monday, you come back Tuesday, you don't have that class again to find out what you missed till Wednesday. Does that make sense?
Yeah, I think that's up to the teachers at that point in time, because they would be able to know that you missed Monday's class, we're meeting on Wednesday, this is the day you have to get it, I'm giving your stuff, so you have to Friday, we'll meet again and get it done.
You would think.
I would think, yeah.
Because what was happening, we had somebody that missed one day, you know, the previous older policy had 2 weeks. So for like, you miss
Oh,
one day,
okay.
you'd have 2 weeks to do it. So we're like, okay, if you miss one day, the teacher can give you, of course, the teacher.
Yeah, and sometimes they switch, so like, if you had A, B, sometimes they go ahead and do B and then AA, depending on
Right.
scheduling or other things, so I think I just want to point out here that folks in that situation need to consider when the next A day is, not the next present day.
Yeah, and they've, we really haven't had any issues with this issues before. It's like if somebody missed 2 days, how long do you make it up? Or
Yeah.
if you miss 2 weeks, so it was really to try to kind of be in a reasonable time. That's kind of what we're doing. Yeah.
So the principals, as far as unexcused absences, full credit for, as it stands now, if you're unexcused, you're able to get full credit for missed work.
Yeah, and that was, we had a pretty good discussion on this. It was a little bit split. What we noticed that really made that turn here, and we discussed this a lot, the summer before last, is we went back and looked up our unexcused absences. And about 30% of our population is considered low income, but 70% of our unexcused absences comes from our low-income students. Okay, so what we're kind of seeing is, you know, that low-income kid is probably less likely to bring in that note from the parent if they had a stomach ache or that kind of thing, or the kid maybe was less likely to go back and remind the parent, hey, I need to get a note. Whatever the case was, we didn't really research why it was, but also kind of inversely, students that weren't low income had a much higher rate of the excused absences. And so really we were, if the kid makes up the credit, makes up the work and makes an A on a test, we felt that it would if we gave a 70% or whatever penalized for not bringing a proper note, that really would end up penalizing our low-income students disproportionately.
Does this encourage kids to not come, knowing that they can make it up?
I
mean,
think what this does, my hope is that it encourages it doesn't reward the kid whose parent's going to write a note if they maybe, just got to make sure they come with the note on that.
I agree with
Go have a
Dean.
doctor on the phone. to come
I
in.
would have had a problem with it if we hadn't included the accumulation of 3 unexcused absences, moving it into a truancy type of aspect.
Right. That's what, it's a truancy issue, not an academic issue.
Yeah.
If they're unexcused absence, then that's truancy.
Two separate issues.
Okay.
And that's really, and Matt will tell you, I'm kind of at the far extreme of this argument, but as far as letting students make it work. But if they're truant, it really is the 3, and they're truant, them, their parents, will deal with that issue on a separate issue. I hope that our assignments are valid, and if they are, then that student needs to do that work, because from my perspective, that work is going to be an assignment that prepares them for, let's just say, the ACT Aspire. I need them to do that. I need that work to be done. I need them to be involved in that lesson. So I don't want to, kind of from my end of it, or the extreme that I'm at, I don't really ever want them not to be able to do that work again. I want them to always have that opportunity. So this is kind of a good middle ground between kind of my viewpoint and then the principles that said, hey, kids lay out, they still can make it up, they're rewarded really for missing. And I get that side too, but just from my perspective, I do like the fact that we've kind of made it 2 separate issues. Because again, I want if the assignment was made, I think the kid needs to do it.
And the overall attendance goals for that, with the accountability piece there, it really doesn't matter if it's excused or unexcused. One of the things that our goal for district was to reduce the number of habitual absent students. So we were trying to lower, it used to maybe get your overall percentage at 95% attendance. That's your average attendance. What we really want to do is find those students that maybe are missing 20 or 30 days, that they may have doctor notes for all those days, but there's an issue going on there that maybe our social workers begin to intervene. That's kind of the role that they've taken on. We've actually seen a decrease in the number of students with those excessive absences. And really, the goal is really not to achieve a number of an overall, but it's really to really kind of focus on the student, kind of see what's going on and see if we need to make some intervention there. That said, that's probably one of the most controversial pieces of our code of conduct there, because that's not, that may not be a unanimous thing among all principals, I would say, but.
That was a difficult conversation.
So in the truancy itself, next piece, the attendance part in the new draft, you'll see move to the front, because attendance is an important piece, so it did move in the book, but for this presentation, I just left it where it is. So what we added was what we're actually doing in practice. So on the first unexcused, there'll be a note, you can scroll up. And then we don't intervene again until the 3rd. And so we had to put that in there, because on the 3rd, we do the pre-early warning at the schools. And then on the 7th is when we do early warning with our district attendance staff. And then on the 10th is when we actually file charges. So we just wanted to make sure that that was spelled out, that we do 1, 3, 7, and 10 in that order. And then at the bottom for withdrawal, there wasn't a number there, so it just said consecutive absences, so we put the number 10. So once they get to 10, then we can withdraw. Okay. And then last but not least was gifted. And Mary Stump just updated this to reflect what the state policy was. So there's nothing changed. We took out the actual qualifiers of aptitude and qualifiers of characteristics and qualifiers of performance, but it matches what the state's recommendation is for gifted. That's the code of conduct.
I had a question on the section, it's not, probably not in that
Okay.
presentation, but the student anti-harassment section. And it lists harassment, sexual harassment, and so forth, and then at the end of the phrase, it says threat of suicide prohibited.
Mm-hmm.
And that didn't make sense to me, because I thought we wanted people to respond to threat of suicide. I mean, I didn't think we wanted it bottled up, but maybe I just misunderstand.
You on the definitions part?
It's the title.
Statement.
Where is it? What
Under
page?
It's under
Under
student
student.
anti-harassment.
What page? Do you have a
Okay.
page down at the
Page
bottom?
29.
And this is-
Depends what document you're in, but.
This policy, the anti-harassment, all that's going to come from the state's model policy.
So if somebody is suicidal, they're prohibited from telling anybody.
I think,
Not from telling anybody.
I think what they're
the threat
saying is it's
itself has to
not
be addressed.
harassment to say you want to kill yourself. You can't harass yourself. I'm not looking at it because I'm not sure where you're at, but I think what it's saying is suicide is prohibited. Like if you say, I wish I was dead, you're not harassing anybody.
It
So it's
says
excluded
harassment,
from
sexual harassment, violence, threat of violence, intimidation, discrimination, and threat of suicide prohibited.
Actually, what you look at,
Because
if you
it
look
just-
at the two paragraphs under
If you
there,
look at G,
the threat of
definition.
suicide is a notice to the parent, and everything up to that is a violation. Look at the first, because the first paragraph says harassment, sexual violence, threat of violence, intimidation, or discrimination, and it addresses it there. So that's what's prohibited. It could actually, the heading could actually say, and, or it could say intimidation, discrimination are prohibited and threat of suicide notice. That's what the threat of suicide is.
Because the others can be, they're disciplinary actions, the other ones, but threat of suicide, they can't make a threat of suicide and not be addressed. The school still has to address it, which is why it's prohibited. So if a student threatens to kill themselves, the administrator has to follow up on that. Not disciplinary wise, but they do have to notify the parent, they do have to refer. That's why it's prohibited. It's prohibited, it can't just go unaddressed.
Prohibited to me says you can't do it.
Right, you
That's
can't
what-
make a threat and not be addressed.
Not be addressed. It's
You
prohibited
can't
to
threaten to
allow
kill
that to
yourself and
happen
not
and
be
not
addressed.
address it. They're not saying you can't do it. They've already done it. They're saying it's prohibitive not to address it. It's required to be
That's not what
addressed.
the thing says. It says it's prohibited, but, okay.
So if a student makes a threat, they're going to follow up on it. The school has to address that threat that's made. Because the threat is prohibited.
We'll take a closer look at that wording to see if there's, I understand what you're saying.
You're
Or we
saying
have
just
to
take,
add
maybe just take prohibited off, and then just, everything.
I mean, you
else.
can't.
I mean, it's not
you
like somebody
can't
wants to
say,
do that,
If you
but-
give me a homework assignment, I'm going to go do something to myself. That's
Okay.
not, that's against school rules to say that.
Okay. If you're
we-
having serious mental issues, is there some other category for that?
Yes, all of these, we can refer to those things, but it's,
Mhm. If you take the word prohibited out,
The
maybe,
next two paragraphs address it.
yeah, that might make it seem like it.
I still haven't figured out where you are.
29.
Of the current student code of conduct?
it's just,
Oh, the new one.
I know what
I
you're
was looking at
saying,
the
Mr.
old one.
I get your point. It just doesn't seem like it flows well with the prohibited.
I think it's,
It seems like you're prohibited from a threat of suicide. like
I
you
think
should
all of
be.
those things are prohibited. Everything in that whole sentence is prohibited.
Right.
That just happens to be.
I mean, it's a real thing that happens to these kids, so if they're discouraged from talking about their real issues, that's what this is saying to me. It's prohibited, so don't tell anybody. And I think that's unhealthy.
In that first sentence, it's actually not in the first sentence there.
That's what I was saying, the threat of suicide is in the notice.
It's in the second paragraph.
It's different.
Yeah, it's different, so,
So it
yeah, it.
maybe a
we'll-
way of phrasing it a
We'll
little
work on the
different.
semantics there.
Yeah.
I understand what you're saying. We'll-
Yeah, and it happens again on page 31, which that may be what y'all are talking about, under descriptive, or description of behavior
Term threat or
expected of
suicide.
students. It says students are expected to treat other students with courtesy. It goes, the next sentence, students are expected and required to refrain from threatening harm or suicide to self. So it sort of happens again.
Okay.
Which I understand that one side of it, but then there's the other side of it too.
That is probably been in there a while. Here, so we'll look at that area and see what we can.
That's from the
that-
state.
That wasn't a focus there.
And one other thing I was going to bring up, I kind of looked at some other school systems in Madison City, I refer to them, but they have a section in here of right to free speech. I don't know if we want to consider that or not, but they have a section that's, might be considered. I can read it if anybody cares, but you can go look it up yourself. Okay, so their section says, "The board recognizes an individual's right to free speech. It also recognizes that in some situations, speech can be handled in such a way as to cause disruption and/or lead school officials to have reasonable suspicion it will cause disruption. Principals may permit student participation in the development of school rules and regulations, and are also authorized to curtail activities determined to be disruptive or potentially disruptive of the educational process at school." So they acknowledge that the kids have a speech right, but there's limitations to it.
Those things
Thank
can
you.
probably fit in some of our codes, but I don't just dislike that being in there. Say that again, Michelle? In the student publication on page 6. Would you like us to look further at having a free speech section in there?
It might clarify issues in the future.
Okay. Look at that.
All right. Any further discussion regarding the code of conduct or any other changes? All right. If everybody is okay, we might take 5 minutes to relieve ourselves for just a moment and then come back to convene in the special session.
We had
session.
All right, I recommend approval of the agenda for May the 4th, 2017.
Second.
A motion and a session. Motion and a second. Is there any discussion regarding the agenda? All those in favor, please say aye.
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 I recommend approval of the following personnel items and the addendum as submitted.
Motion.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Is there any discussion? Hold on just a minute, Jim. All those in favor, please say aye.
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 Aye. And at this time, I believe we have certificates to move into executive session to discuss expulsion as well as a student grievance. So when we come back, we will be voting on the expulsion and then the grievance, if anybody would like to stay for those results. Otherwise, I'll accept the motion to go into executive session.
Motion.
Second.
Motion and a second to move into executive session for the expulsion first. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. I think we could have waited this 5 minute break after that. I didn't realize it would go that smoothly.